Chris, my dad, is a heavy diesel mechanic, 64 years old. For more than 10 years, he has been my business partner as well as mentor. To give you some context, my dad has been running a small mechanic workshop for as long as I can remember. So recently, he disclosed something that totally turned my life upside down. His art captivated me even as a small child. On weekends, I would visit the shop, attempting to assist in whatever capacity. That passion drove me to seek an automobile engineering degree so I could formally start working for the family company. By the time I was 23, I was working full-time with my dad, helping him with daily operations as well as repairs. Back then, it was only my dad, 2 part-time mechanics, and a single shop car. With time, I assumed more responsibility and finally became the one in charge of running the firm. Using my knowledge and background, I put some fresh ideas into action that let the company expand noticeably. We've grown to have more than 35 staff members and a fleet of 15 vehicles during the last 10 years. From $250,000 to over $7 million this year, our yearly income shot through. My dad stayed largely on the workshop floor, while I moved into a more office-based position supervising the business side of things. I have poured my heart and soul into turning a little family firm into something far more. The many hours of labor and the sacrifices I have made were not done so only for personal benefit. One day, I thought this company would be mine to keep growing and tending. I was creating a legacy, not only doing a job. My 48-year-old elder brother Nathan followed a much different road. He began his own job in the city, attended college, and trained as an accountant. Nathan never showed any enthusiasm for our dad's repair shop, unlike me. Actually, he felt ashamed growing up since our dad worked as a mechanic. He denigrated the work I completed with our dad and refused to accept it in front of our friends. Despite Nathan's contempt of our dad's line of work, my dad always saw him as the golden child. This favoritism wasn't always there. When I decided to pursue automotive engineering, Nathan kept trying to discourage me, saying that it was a dead-end job and that I should aim for something more prestigious. My dad provided equal love to each of us when we were kids, but Nathan had pneumonia at 15 and spent weeks ill. For our family, it was frightening. The doctors even cautioned us about possibly losing his life. Spending several evenings at the hospital with his dad, their time together appeared to forge a unique relationship between them. Though he had little interest in the family company, Nathan was the obvious favorite from then on. As I grew older, the favoritism became more difficult to overlook. One event in particular still hurts now. The school was having an awards presentation. I was approximately 16. Excited to inform my parents, I had worked rather hard to get an award for excellence in one of my classes. When I informed my mother, she was delighted. She pledged to help me in any manner she could, even though she worked long hours as a nurse and missed the ceremony. Conversely, my dad appeared indifferent about it. I asked him whether he might make it, hoping he would. He paused momentarily, then, much to my dismay, said he had already scheduled a basketball game with Nathan. Interjecting, my mother advised him to give it some thought and proposed they could both attend the event together. He grudgingly consented, but I could already feel his lack of enthusiasm. My dad assured me not to worry the night before the ceremony. He would most sure be there. So the next day, I stood in the school auditorium, watching the audience in search of his face. He never showed up, though. I went up to the platform, got my award, and grinned at the ovation from my classmates as my name was called. But inwardly I was devastated. After the event, I messaged my mother, letting her know Dad missed it. Startled, she asked me immediately whether I was sure. I clarified how I had not noticed him anywhere in the audience. It must have been a misinterpretation. My mother comforted me. She had programmed 5 alerts on his phone and even checked to see his car wasn't at home. We both thought something had to be done urgently, but I stepped into a full-fledged fight when I arrived home. With their shouts resounding throughout the house, my parents were yelling at one another. Mom was enraged. "Why didn't you come up for your kid? He came home with an award. You assured us you would show up." Not knowing if I should even interrupt, I froze in the corridor. Before he could say anything further, Nathan walked into the room sloppily eating an ice cream cone. My dad was attempting to excuse himself, claiming he had lost track of time and that something came up. His justification made no sense. Glancing at my mother, he added, "Yeah, we went for ice cream." We arrived too late for the ceremony, so we decided to head back home. I felt a flood of incredulity. For ice cream, they skipped my award ceremony. Mom was insane. You wanted ice cream, so you skipped the momentous day for your brother? She cried, her voice trembling with rage. Nathan shrugged, totally unconcerned, and my dad, my own father, tried to minimize it. It's just an award ceremony, he waved off. More will come in the future. It's not a huge thing. Hearing those from him was like a kick to the belly. Still utterly silent, I stood there. It was about the lack of support, the apathy, and the obvious message that my accomplishments had little bearing on the celebration. I stared at him, wounded and perplexed, and pushed out a weak, "It's okay, Dad. I had worked hard for that medal, and the one person I had truly hoped would be pleased with me, my dad. Not worry about it." Yet the words tasted sour in my mouth. I walked to my room, closed the door, and at last allowed the tears to flow as I wanted to quell the flames of the dispute. Not long after, my mom entered my room, sitting next to me on the bed. I had worked so hard to make my dad pleased, but at that moment it felt like nothing I did would ever be good enough. She wrapped her arm around my shoulder, and I could sense her same level of disturbance. She said little, just let me rant and cry. She said quietly at last, "I know it hurts, sweetheart. Your dad botched up. Still, let this not diminish your accomplishments. I admire you. You worked really hard for that honor. Nothing alters that." Her words were consoling, and knowing at least one of my parents was on my lap helped me to feel a bit better. Still, I couldn't get rid of the sense of betrayal. That wasn't the first time my dad's preference had wounded me, and it most surely wouldn't be the last. It evolved over years into a trend. Several times my mother questioned him about it, and Dad would try briefly to be more there for me, but it never lasted. Despite all, I continued on since he always turned back to putting Nathan first, no matter what I did to attempt to gain his favor. Working long hours and doing all I could to expand the business my dad had started, I put myself into the firm. Fast forward to last year and things took a direction I never would have predicted. Cars became my obsession. I told myself that if I could show my commitment to the company, maybe one day he would realize my value. Though no one, least of all me, knew what was ahead, my parents were experiencing a difficult time. Years of conflict between my parents followed by divorce filed by my dad. Though I knew their disputes had been growing worse over the years, I was surprised. Still, it was difficult for me to understand the notion that they would really break up. Things grew even more bizarre not long after the divorce. Chris, my dad, began seeing Olivia, a lady just 30 years old, who surprised me much, just a few years my junior. At first, I attempted to dismiss it as I knew it was one of those flings individuals experience following a divorce. Though I kept my lips closed, I wasn't happy about it. 5 months ago, everything changed. He appeared pleased, and I wasn't going to rein in his procession, as embarrassing as the circumstances seemed. For what my dad said, an important dinner, my brother Nathan and I were called. I assumed it was another family announcement, maybe with reference to his connection with Olivia. I sensed the tension in the air as soon as I entered, as though something was going to go extremely wrong. We sat down and my dad stared at both of us gravely. His shifting in his chair told me that whatever he was about to say wouldn't be palatable to me. He cleared his throat and at last spoke, his tone solemn. "I have something important to share with you both," he said after what felt like an age. "Olivia and I got married." The words struck me like a blow in the face. I gave Nathan a quick look. He seemed exactly as startled as I felt. Without notifying us, my dad had gone to wed a woman over half his age. Not one invitation, not one heads up, not anything. He merely tossed it over here, hoping for us to be, what? Joyful for him? Ignorant of the incredulity painted on our faces, he kept talking. He spoke on about how Olivia had brightened his life, and on their beginning of this interesting new chapter together. I knew not what to say. The real bombshell came next. "I've been thinking a lot lately about the future of the business," my dad said, veering the conversation as if this next part were absolutely natural. My parents' marriage had fallen apart. Now here he was, already married to someone else. And I have some choices about the succession plan. I sat up straight, suddenly more alert. This is the direction I had been aiming toward. Over a 10-year period, I had been developing that business beside him. I had put tears, blood, and sweat into creating today what it was. hoping that this would be the time he would at last recognize my diligence and commitment. My head began to run. Then he dropped the hammer. "I've decided that Nathan will inherit the business," he said, absolutely straight-faced. Maybe he was ready to formally hand it over to me, to give me the reins to continue building what we had established together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, since he is married with children and more than you need for financial stability. The room whirled, and I thought the ground had been snatched from under me. Nathan asks, the same Nathan who had constantly disparaged the company, who showed no interest in it at all. The same sibling who seldom visited the factory had spent his whole life employed in accounting and finance. Nathan was going to inherit the company I had devoted my life to? My chest was tight as I searched for the words. "Why?" I managed to gasp out, fury and hurt growing inside me. "I have spent my whole life developing this business with you. How could you give it to Nathan just now?" Dad just blinks once in a while. He seemed not to even see the damage all over my face. "Nathan has a family to support," he replied simply, as if that covered all. "You have no children or marriage. I couldn't imagine this company will provide his future consistency. Since Nathan had a wife and children, but I did not, he was discounting all of my effort. It seemed like the last kind of treachery. My time, my energy, my youth, all I had given, were being thrown aside since I didn't match the definition of what he considered a worthy successor should be. "This isn't fair," I cried, my voice shaking with rage. "I have offered this company all I have. I have created it from the ground up and worked with you. And now you would just be handing it to Nathan? His priorities have never included this company. Up until now, he hardly wanted anything to do with it." My dad shrugged, entirely unconcerned. "You can still work in the business," he continued, as though that would provide some sort of comfort. "Still, you will be working with Nathan. He will be handling everything going forward." I found what I was hearing unbelievable. After all I had done, I was meant to simply sit back and let Nathan, who had no idea how to operate a mechanic business, take over and call the shots? Looking at Nathan, I hoped, praying for some sort of comprehension or encouragement. Still, he would not even match my gaze. He sat there, silently looking at the table. I felt my heart drop even lower. Knowing how hard I had worked, my own brother remained silent. It was not only about the company at that point. He was going to grab all I had created without resistance. It covered everything. Years of feeling like I was second best. Years of favoritism. Resigned and crushed, I murmured a bitter, "Fine, Dad." I had spent my entire life trying to earn my dad's approval, trying to prove myself, and here he was, handing everything to Nathan on a silver platter simply because he had a family. "If that is your wish," I got up, my heart thumping in my chest, and left the home. Fighting no longer appealed to me. I was too wounded, too exhausted, too deceived. When I came home, the reality of what had just happened fell over me. The company I had imagined would be my legacy, the job I had put my life into, was being ripped from me, and there was nothing I could do about it. Again, my dad had picked Nathan, and this time, he was not only selecting him above me in some little capacity, as if my efforts meant nothing, he was handing him all I had labored for. Feeling completely devastated, I dropped onto the couch with my head in my hands and sought out to my mother, seeking someone to talk to, someone who would understand. I told her everything, how my dad had passed the company to Nathan, how I felt betrayed, how everything I had fought for was sliding through my hands. Quietly listening, my mother replied with a sadness in her voice as I finished. "I never imagined he would go this far," she remarked. "It is unjust. You have worked so hard. To watch him offer Nathan all of this." Her comments really struck me as they absolutely reflected what I was going through. I was not sure about letting Nathan know about the business, but to be totally cut off? It seemed like a smack in the face until my mother replied, "You've done amazing things and you don't need his approval." This set off a flutter of will inside of me. Why do you not launch your own company? You have developed several bonds with clients. That notion struck me like a flashbulb. I'm sure they would much prefer deal with you than with Nathan. When I could use what I had learned, grab the clients I had developed connections with, and start over on my own, why should I stay in a company that didn't appreciate me? That concept evolved over the following several days into something more. I was determined to show my dad wrong if he believed he could just give everything to Nathan. I was not going to ask for leftovers from a business I had assisted in building. After my talk with my mom, I felt something change inside me. I had collected enough money over the years to start something fresh, and now, with the fire of betrayal burning in my breast, I was ready to put those ideas into action. Though it had changed into something else, determination, the grief and disappointment from my dad's treachery hadn't disappeared. I came to see that I could create my future without my dad's business or permission. Over a 10-year period, I had worked hard, developed contacts, and personally expanded the company. I valued myself. I wasn't going to waste any more effort attempting to persuade my dad if he cannot see it. So the next day, I started my plan. Particularly the ones I had personally recruited into the company, I contacted some customers I had developed close connections with over the years. I didn't badmouth the firm or my dad. I didn't have to. I just informed them I would be quitting the family company and that I was beginning my own adventure. Their answers were shockingly favorable. These were individuals who knew me, trusted me, and valued the work I had produced. Although they were startled to learn of the circumstances, they soon reassured me that they would be trailing to my new company. It was confirming in a different way than I had anticipated. Although my parents might not have appreciated what I offered, it was abundantly evident that my clients did. Over the following several weeks, I worked non-stop to build up my new company. They saw me for who I was, and that gave me the confidence I needed to go on. Though I had the money saved, it still seemed like a great faith leap. It was about showing to myself that I could flourish on my own, not only about disproving my dad. As news got out in the business, some of the staff members from Dad's company contacted me. I discovered a new site, began assembling a small team, and made sure everything was ready for a seamless changeover. Many of them wanted to work for me rather than remain with my dad because they knew I was launching my own company. Though it was hardly shocking, I had not expected that. They trusted my leadership and had witnessed personally how much I had done to expand the family company. They left my dad's store one by one to join me, and as my team developed, so did my confidence. I vividly remember the day I sent in my resignation letter to my dad, feeling a peculiar mix of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and yes, a little satisfaction. I strolled into the office. Startled to see me, my dad glanced up from his desk. "What's this?" As I set the envelope on his desk, he questioned, "My resignation?" And I said coolly. He seemed obviously surprised. "I'm starting my own company." He glanced at me like he couldn't believe what was occurring for a second, then continued, his voice rising, "You can't just leave now. We are in the middle of a pivotal time for the company. Are you simply going to leave?" I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I was not scared of him. "Indeed I am," I insisted angrily. "I have spent more than 10 years of my life working for this company. You decided to give it to Nathan. I am not staying here to tidy your mess." He laughed, obviously not expecting me to be firm. "I am constructing something of my own." "You are seriously making a mistake," he cautioned. "You'll regret this." But I didn't waver. "Maybe I will," I responded. "But at least I will be making my own decisions. This is what's best for me." I turned and left, experiencing in years not felt independence. As my company started, things happened fast. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I was ready for it. The customers who promised their allegiance turned out, and within months, I was seeing notable increase. Over the years, my relationships and trust paid dividends. While back at my dad's store things weren't going so great, my business was flourishing. The company began to fail without the clients I had brought in, and without many of the key personnel who had departed to work for me. Though I knew it was unavoidable, I had no delight in seeing it struggle. Though Nathan had never participated in daily operations, my dad had thought Nathan could handle everything. His ignorance of running a repair company was evident. I heard from the grapevine that daily conditions were worsening. The company was swiftly losing money as clients left. Previously so sure about his choice to give everything to Nathan, my dad was now seeing his empire fall apart right in front of him. It wasn't long before my dad messaged me. He had made his decision and was now dealing with the results. It was an intense, lengthy text loaded with guilt and remorse. He charged me of deserting the family, of allowing the company to collapse, of turning his back on Nathan and me when most needed. I couldn't believe the audacity of it. He even mentioned that Olivia, his new wife, had left him because he couldn't support her extravagant lifestyle anymore. The message ended with him practically begging me to come back to the family business and make things right by bringing the clients back and saving the company. After all he had done, after turning over the company I had helped create to Nathan, after treating me like I didn't matter, he now expected me to fly in and save them? I didn't reply. Not one thing to say remained. As the weeks passed, I concentrated on my own business, which was developing. My dad had created his bed and now he had to lay in it. My crew was devoted, my clients were pleased, and I felt more in charge of my life than I had ever known. I hadn't known I was missing until I at last broke away from my dad's shadow. Still, the messages and calls from my dad continued. He persisted in asking that I assist in saving the family company. After the guilt-tripping assault grew intolerable, I disabled his number. Finally, Nathan, who had remained silent all through, tried to reach out, but I had no interest in hearing from him either. Through family friends and my mother, I learned that the company was swiftly failing. He had made his decision when he took it without thinking twice. Now he was dealing with the consequences. Just to pay off debt, my dad had to sell it, and the deal barely turned a profit. Olivia left my dad virtually penniless after taking whatever money remained in their divorce settlement. After his brief, catastrophic run as CEO of the company, Nathan had returned to his accounting work. It was odd to watch the company I had spent so many years disintegrating so rapidly. Still, I felt not depressed about it. It was something I had migrated on from, not my business anymore. 6 months had gone since I had blocked my dad and Nathan. The company I was running today, the one I had created from the bottom up, was flourishing. I had emerged from the ashes of his treachery stronger than ever, and I was not looking back. My company has developed much more than I could have predicted in that period. We have grown, acquired fresh business, and established a strong industry reputation. Knowing that every ounce of accomplishment results from my own effort, not something given to me or dependent on anybody else's approval, has made for an immensely satisfying experience. Though I wouldn't give for anything the freedom I experience, that is, the control over my own life and decisions, there have also been some significant personal adjustments, as fantastic as things have been professionally. Lily, my girlfriend, has been a tremendous help all through this. She has been my rock, someone I turn to when the weight of operating a business becomes intolerable, or when the residual hurt of my family's betrayal resurfaces. I have been preparing to propose to her for some time. Our connection has only gotten better over the past few months, and I know she is the one I want to spend my lifetime with. We agree on marriage, on creating a future together, and on all else. She is the one person I can trust on totally, after all I've gone through with my family. She has stood by my side and seen me at my lowest. I cannot imagine living without her. Though I've created this new life for myself, my family's turmoil hasn't totally evaporated. I have chosen the ring and am only waiting for the proper opportunity to ask. I learned a few weeks ago from a family acquaintance that my dad's company had formally closed. It wasn't shocking. The company had been faltering for months, and under Nathan's direction, it was not possible for it to continue without me or the clientele I had attracted. Ultimately, my dad had to sell it to pay off debt, and the transaction brought in much less than he had anticipated. Olivia took all the little money he did get from their divorce settlement. I should have felt something, maybe grief, perhaps some feeling of loss, but really, I felt nothing at all. The company my dad had created, the one I had assisted in expanding, was no longer relevant to my existence. That day I turned in my resignation and strolled away, having already let go of it. Seeing everything break apart was only the logical result of my dad's choices. Strangely, the collapse of the family company gave me greater faith in the road I had decided upon. Having left when I did, I had done the proper thing. Had I stayed, I would have been caught attempting to tidy the mess Nathan produced, and would have forfeited my own happiness and future in the process. Steering clear allowed me to create something better, something really mine. But the consequences of my dad's choices extended beyond the company. My mother told me Nathan had quit the mechanic world entirely and was working toward re-entry into accounting. Simply unable to run the store, he was forced to go back to his former line of work. Furthermore, disclosed to me by my mother was that my dad had been having financial difficulties since the company shut. He had little left when Olivia departed. Few days ago, I got a message from an unidentified phone. I identified right away who it was. I opened it against better judgment, and sure enough, it belonged to my dad. The extensive message consisted in apologies and justifications. He stated he was sorry about how things had gone between us and about what had occurred with the company. He said he was having trouble making ends meet and how tough life had been since Olivia left him. Still, one element of the statement really caught my attention. "I need your help. I cannot make it without you. Kindly return." It was not the kind of apology I had been expecting for. It was not a recognition of how much he had offended me by selecting Nathan above me, therefore betraying my confidence. It was simply another need for assistance, another appeal for me to undo his damage. He still did not grasp after all this time. He sought a lifeline. He was not ready to atone. I didn't answer when he asked me to intervene and spare him from the results of his own deeds. I now know that perhaps the best reaction is none at all. Not one more thing to say to my dad. He decided what to do. I have done likewise. It's difficult to completely break connections with relatives, even if they've injured you. I'm not going to be the one who steps in and saves him from the repercussions of his mistakes, particularly not following the way he treated me. There's always that tiny bit of you that dreams things could be different, that perhaps one day they will wake up and see what they have done. I have come to grips with the reality, though, that my dad will never view events the way I do. I have to admit that he will never really know the harm he has done. I'm at last in a position free from the weight of my family's expectations and drama. I can't keep clinging to the hope that he'll change, and I can't allow him pull me down with his blunders. I have my own company, my own achievements, and a future with Lily that excites me to construct. Looking back, I understand now that my dad's treachery marked the beginning of something fresh, rather than the conclusion of my existence. For the first time, I feel like I am in charge of my own fate. It made me walk outside his shadow and start a life on my own, and even if the road has not been simple, I am appreciative of where it has taken me. Regarding my dad, I honestly have stopped worrying about it. I know nothing about what the future holds for him. As for me, I have become more secure in who I am. I will not be dragged back into the tumult of his life. I cannot correct his errors. Family is about the people who support you, who stand by you, and who respect you. It is not only about blood. I have moved on and am ready to leave the past where it belongs. Lily, my mother, and the friends and co-workers who have supported me through thick and thin comprise my family today. These are the ones that count, the ones I know I can rely on. And as I am ready to pop the question to Lily, I find comfort. I have been working for this life. I have earned the life I am living, and I won't let someone take that away from me once more. Story 2. Unaware of it, she unjustly accused my brother. 8 years ago, my brother passed away. Hence, here's the deal. Maya here, 22 years old, a triplet. I suppose I was a triplet at least. Adam, one of my brothers, passed away at our 14-year age. It has been quite some time. Still, even after all these years, I find myself unable to claim I have only one brother. Like it feels inappropriate. We grew up as 3, really. You know, he doesn't vanish from my life simply because one of us is no more here. Still, 3 months ago, I began my new work. It's a tiny clinic, and generally I enjoy working with the folks I do. Though everyone is kind enough, I have not precisely developed best friendships with anyone. You know how it is with newness. One must wait to approach individuals. So one day over lunch, some of the colleagues were simply chatting, and the topic turned to siblings. How many I had, they inquired. Having gone through this situation 100 times already, I always act in the same way. I just mentioned that I am a triplet. There are 2 brothers of mine. That's simpler, and honestly, I'm not trying to traumatize someone I hardly know. Like, what are my expected actions? Drop the fact that one of my brothers passed away when I was 14 and caused everyone great discomfort. Rather not is what I want. Nobody raised an eyebrows at my response. I didn't feel the need to elaborate as they most likely considered it as an amusing fact or anything. It was great until around 1 week later when my brother Dylan arrived to pick me up from work because my vehicle was in the repair. At that point, Everything went backwards. We are therefore leaving the building when one of my colleagues, Sarah, spots Dylan. And my brother's a nice-looking man. So I wasn't startled when she said, "Oh my God, Maya, your brother is that? He's really lovely. You have to arrange for me to see him." Originally, I brushed it off and said, "Nah, he has a girlfriend." That seemed to mark the end of it. Nevertheless, no, she persisted, asking me all these questions about him, and eventually this becomes very embarrassing. She goes, "What about your other brother? Is his status single?" Now at this point, I'm caught as Adam is the second sibling she mentions. And I'm not going to say that he's, vanished from sight. I therefore simply started to sort of worry and mentioned that he is also not accessible. Though it felt strange as heck, technically I didn't lie. She dropped it after that and I believed I was in the clear, but oh my God, was I mistaken? Fast forward a few days and I start hearing some rumors. Nothing spectacular at first, just a couple of my coworkers conversing softly when I went by. But when you can sense people talking about you? Yeah, there was that atmosphere. I disregarded it at first since I detest confrontation and assumed it was probably nothing. Boy, was I mistaken. One day over lunch, I overhear Sarah and a few of her pals, Chloe and Emily, talking about me, and they're not even being discreet. They're full-on chatting about how I didn't hook Sarah up with my other brother. Because get this, he's single on Instagram now. At this time, I'm sitting there wondering, what the heck is she talking about? Adam never even had Instagram. Hell, he wasn't around when Instagram became a thing. So plainly, she's confused him with someone else. My best guess is that she noticed one of my relatives who has our last name and is in a couple images with me and Dylan, and believed he was the third triplet. Whatever, right? I moved on believing it was really a simple mistake. That is, till it deteriorated greatly. I'm minding my own business at work the next day when two colleagues I hardly know approach me, looking all business. "Hey Maya, what's up with your brother?" Clearly perplexed, I ask, "Oh, what do you mean?" And they go, "We heard that the reason you neglected to arrange Sarah with him was some college-related matter, like accusations or whatever." I quote him, simply sitting there gazing at them as though they had gone insane. Rumors. Institutions of education, Adam, died at 14, hence he never even attended college. I tell them some error must exist, and they glance at one another as though they reject my truth. One of them responds, "Well, Sarah reported hearing from someone who visited your college that your brother had some problems." I'm starting to panic at this point. Though my heart is pounding, I attempt to keep cool. "Look, it is not feasible," I tell them. "When we were 14, our brother died. And do you suppose they took me seriously?" Not so sure. Sarah was summoned over, and all three of them simply began accusing me of lying. It was crazy. I had to grab my phone and show them images from Adam's burial. Pictures of Dylan and I at his tomb. Even images of us at our graduation carrying his portrait. It was degrading. Instead of owning it, though, they began claiming that I was still lying since, when they originally inquired, I omitted mentioning Adam's death. Like, how reasonable is that? I lie as I wanted not to bring up my dead brother during small conversation. It like a dream. Chloe and Emily simply ate it all. Sarah made this enormous thing about how I was being secretive about not informing everyone straight out that Adam had departed. After that, the whole workplace changed, and they began murmurs about me even more. People were staring at me strange, and every time I passed by, I felt stressed. It was as though I had turned into some monster in Sarah's spun-around tale. The worst feature is nobody appeared to give a damn about Sarah creating this horrible lie about my brother. Their main concentration was on the fact I hadn't told them Adam was gone, like that was the offense, not the fact Sarah had lied about something so important. Though I have no idea what I expected, I did not expect this. I felt caught. I couldn't undo my response to the sibling question. And would it have changed anything even if I did? I don't think so. Still, that's where things stood. The speed with which everything collapsed still shocks me. And to be honest, I have no idea how to undo it. How can this be done? Thus, following the huge blowout over my brother, things did not quite settle down. They actually started to become worse. Quite worse. Like Sarah found she couldn't let it go. She would back off and maybe even apologies, I thought after I presented those images. But no thanks. She doubled down and felt as though half the workplace was beginning to buy into her standard. Little things like folks avoiding me or muttering as I entered the break room kicked off everything. You know the sensation you get when you find out others are talking about you? When you question, though, they just act as though everything is good. Now it was essentially my daily existence at work. Everyone started strangely mistrusting me for no apparent cause. It was irritating as heck. Then one day, a few coworkers grabbed me aside and said, "Is everything okay at home? You appear, I don't know, like something's odd." I didn't even know how to answer. What the hell did they mean by off? I assured them I was all right, just dealing with personal matters, and tried to shrug it off, but I could see it on their faces. They didn't believe me. A couple of days after that, things worsened. I overheard Sarah chatting to Chloe and Emily again, but this time she wasn't just whispering. She was straight up slamming me, describing how I'd been lying to everyone from the start. She also implied that my family had some dark secrets and that I was covering for them. Like, what the heck does that even mean? Then Sarah dropped this blow. She informed them she had proof that my brother Adam had been a nasty man in high school. Indeed, she mentioned so rather explicitly. My ears let me astound myself. From where proof exists? How could somebody have evidence about something that never happened? It knocked me like a brick. Sarah was no longer only chatting gossip. She was fabricating stories about my brother in order to fit her image. My stomach started to turn over. I wanted to yell, tell her to turn the heck off. I froze, though, instead. I wasn't sure what to do. She merely whirled around as usual whenever I confronted her. And I would suddenly be the evil guy. Still, events did not end there. Well, no, Sarah still had to work on. When I arrived at work the next day, I sensed somewhat strange atmosphere in the workplace. People were straightforwardly gazing at me as though I had two heads. Though I was too nervous to ask, I couldn't grasp what was happening. Then Nina, one of my colleagues, drew me away during lunch. Among the few individuals who have been polite to me during all of this is her. She seemed really awkward, as like she didn't want to be the one sharing this with me. But she finally blurted it out. "Sarah has therefore been speaking things about your family and yourself in such manner. In high school, your brother could have engaged in very terrible behavior. She claimed to have heard from someone attending the same university as him." I swear, for a moment my brain went short-circuited. My heart dropped down into my gut. These days, this was not simply small-town gossip. People were really believing Sarah when she was full of slights on my dead brother. No more could I remain silent. Nina was reluctant when I sought additional specifics. All she would tell was that Sarah had allegedly contacted someone claiming to know Adam, and this weird man had informed her all this garbage about him. Nina looked really uncomfortable, and I could see she didn't quite trust Sarah. But the fact this was even a conversation was messing my head. "This individual is who?" Trying to keep my voice calm, I asked. Nina avoided eye contact and shrugged. "None sure." Sarah omitted precise wording. She only mentioned she had sources. References, actually. This is a criminal investigation? By now I was so enraged I could hardly think clearly. How far would someone go to make me appear bad? And under what circumstances? Since I wanted her hooked up with Dylan different, it made no logical sense. Though I felt I had to act, I was unsure of what. The sensible course seemed to be reporting her to Air. Given our tiny clinic, we lacked a proper HR department nevertheless. The best I could do was once again chat to Jenna, the administrative manager. I'd previously discussed the matter with her once, but I wasn't sure if she would treat it this time seriously. Nobody was on my side. Sarah seemed to be turning the entire office into a dodgy liar's dream come true. Still, I was compelled to attempt. I thus went to Jenna's workplace after lunch and set everything out. I told her what Sarah had been saying, how she was accusing my deceased brother of things that never happened, and how people were beginning to believe her. So annoyed I could hardly control tears. Though Jenna looked startled and compassionate, she wasn't sure precisely what to do either. She assured us. She chatted with Sarah to find out whether the stories had any reality. I became aware of my depth in this quagmire at that point. Not even Jenna completely believed me. She was cautious, trying not to get biased too soon. But that simply made me feel worse, as I couldn't even get my own management to notice how strange the circumstances were. How would I stop Sarah from disseminating additional falsehoods? Trying to keep my head down and stay out of sight, I returned to my desk following the conference. Every time I looked up, though, I saw someone speaking to their neighbor or gazing at me. There was genuine paranoia. I felt as though I was caught in some terrible dream from which I was unable to wake up, then, exactly when I felt things couldn't get worse, they did. Dylan's girlfriend Emma contacted me that evening. She sounded terrified and asked me whether I had seen the Instagram messages Sarah emailed her. I hadn't thought about. Apparently, Sarah emailed Emma this crazy note about me after spotting her on social media. She said I'd been lying about everything, about Adam, about our family, about Dylan, and that I was attempting to get Emma to move in with Dylan. Sarah said I was some sort of master manipulator who had been hiding a third sibling all these time, covering up some major family secret. Emma was enraged, not at me, at Sarah. She believed I ought to know what was going on, even if she didn't believe a word of it. It amazed me. Sarah was now aiming at my personal life, transcending business and drama, distributing falsehoods to those not in the office. I had no understanding why she seemed to be on a mission to demolish everything about me. I felt totally hopeless by the time I ended the phone with Emma. Sarah's falsehoods were impossible to avoid, no matter where I looked at. At work, I was getting ice outs. Now she was trying to tamper with my family and relationships while rumors were flying. I thought my own life was slipping from under my grasp, and I couldn't stop it whatever I did. Edit 1. I thus felt at this time that things couldn't get any worse. Sarah was now trying to meddle with my personal life by pulling Emma into it, having already disseminated enough falsehoods at work. I was so worried and furious that I was not even sleeping correctly anymore. Not knowing what fresh rumors Sarah would come up with next. Every day I was dreading heading to work. To be honest, though, I wasn't ready for nothing that followed. Things really started to get hot Friday morning. When I first entered the office, I immediately saw that individuals were acting rather strange, even more than normal. Like others were plain forwardly avoiding me. The second I passed by, Chloe and Emily, among others, were dead silent and gave me these side-eye glances as they were grouped around Sarah's desk. You know when you may simply feel something is off? Indeed, it resembled that. I attempted to ignore it and went about my morning, but my phone rang as soon as I settled at my desk. I peered at the screen and saw a message from a prohibited number. I immediately felt something negative about it, hence my heart began to race. Opening it, the message was brief but weird as heck. You stop lying. We hold the truth. I sensed the shiver slink down my back. Who the devil was forwarding this? Though I had no clue whether it was Sarah or one of her subordinates, it was very evident that someone was overreaching themselves. I attempted to brush it off and get to work, but my phone buzzed once more. Still another lesson, this one with images. It was a snapshot of my residence. My head was whirling. How came they to view my house? And why would this be any sort of threat? For a minute I felt as though I couldn't breathe. My hands were trembling and I honestly knew nothing about what to do. Should I bring it forward? Should I address Sarah? Was something else going on, or was this even relevant to her? I knew one thing for sure, even though I had no answers. This had transcended some small-scale office strife. Though I tried to keep my calm all day at work, my anxiety was skyrocketing. That message dominated everything I could think about, hence I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I looked up, Sarah or one of her tiny groupies were gazing at me, grinning as though they knew something I didn't. It made my stomach turn over. Participated in this? They considered this as some sort of joke? When the day at last came to a close, I hurried back as quickly as I could. The entire journey was running in my head, and as soon as I arrived home, I contacted my brother Dylan. He became enraged when I mentioned the texts. He was prepared to march straight into my workplace and face Sarah personally. Not to, though, I advised him. Though Dylan wasn't having it, the last thing I wanted was things to get any more messy. He insisted on us seeing the police, and to be honest, he was right. This was spiraling out of control. I had to act before things worse. That evening, we visited the neighborhood police station to make a report. The officer we dealt with gave it careful attention, particularly when I showed him the photo of my house. They promised to look, but couldn't promise anything straight immediately. Though still on edge, I exited the station somewhat better. After all, what if it were Sarah or one of her buddies? Should they choose to engage in even more terrible behavior? What then? The sensation of someone watching me persisted. The following several days were peaceful. I stopped receiving strange texts, and for a moment I thought perhaps things were at last settling down. Of course, though, I was mistaken. Monday morning arrives and I'm back at work trying to keep my head down and simply get through the day. At first everything appears normal, but then Jenna, our administrative manager, called into her office about midday. Knowing it's not going to be great, I start to feel sinking in my belly right away. When I go in, Jenna is seated there looking rather serious. She already shows poor signs when she doesn't even offer me a seat. She cuts right to the point. Maya, I should discuss anything that has come up with you. I nod, already starting to brise. She on. Several of your staff have been complaining to me. They have voiced worries regarding your recent behavior. They sense your concealment of something. I fell asleep. My actions covering something. I know exactly from whom this came from. Sarah went first. It demanded to be. I told Jenna everything about the rumors. Sarah had been distributing the photo of my house, the notes. I lay everything out there, thinking she would at last see the whole picture. Jenna's expression remained the same nonetheless. She simply listened from her spot. She continued, I understand this has been difficult for you when I was finished, but we have to take care of your colleagues' worries. I will investigate the photo's messaging. But I need you to concentrate on keeping the workplace friendly in the interim. What I was hearing stunned me. She was advising me to simply swallow it and act as though everything was good. I tried to protest, but Jenna seemed not going to do more than investigate. I came out of her office demoralized. How then could this be happening? Though I was the one being tormented, nonetheless I was the one advised to keep things cheerful. It seemed as though sticking up for myself was costing me penalties, and then it got worse exactly when I felt it couldn't be much worse. I received even another SMS from the blacklisted phone later that day. This time the medium was video. Opening it, my heart was racing. When I found what it was, I almost dropped my phone. The video was a hazy, unsteady footage of me at my residence. It had been obviously shot via a window. Just going about my day in my living room, I could see myself totally ignorant of someone else observing me. I thought I would start to feel ill. Whoever this was, they were not only fooling around with me, they watched and stalked me. I shivered. Dylan answered right away when I phoned him, running straight to my house. Together we viewed the video, and he seemed exactly as frightened out as I was. He wanted to contact the cops once again, but I knew with only a video, there was nothing they could accomplish. I officially felt afraid for my life. Whoever this was, they were acting more boldly, and I had no idea what to do. I could not keep living like way, looking over my shoulder constantly, watching for the next eerie message or video. That evening, I packed a suitcase and slept at Dylan's house. My own house no longer seemed safe, and I was not going to hang about to see what this guy would do next. One thing was clear. I had no idea how long I could maintain living like this. This beyond mere work drama now. This was private. Still, I was compelled to attempt. I thus went to Jenna's workplace after lunch and set everything out. I told her what Sarah had been saying, how she was accusing my deceased brother of events that never happened, and how others were beginning to believe her. So annoyed I could hardly control tears. Though she didn't precisely sure what to do either, Jenna looked startled and empathetic. She assured us. She spoke with Sarah to try to find any validity to the rumors. I became aware of my depth in this quagmire at that point. Not even Jenna completely believed me. She was cautious, trying not to get biased too soon. But if I cannot even convince my own management to recognize how ridiculous the circumstances were, it only made me feel worse. How might I stop Sarah from disseminating additional falsehoods? Trying to keep my head down and stay out of sight, I returned to my desk following the conference. Every time I looked up, though, I saw someone speaking to their neighbor or gazing at me. Real paranoia was present. I thought I was caught in some terrible dream from which I could not wake up. Then, exactly when I felt things couldn't get worse, they did. Dylan's girlfriend Emma contacted me that evening. She asked me whether I had seen the messages Sarah gave her on Instagram and sounded frightened out. I hadn't noticed. Apparently, Sarah emailed Emma this ridiculous message about me after spotting her on social media. She said I had been lying about everything, about Adam, about our family, about Dylan, and that I was attempting to get Emma to live with Dylan. Sarah said I was some sort of great manipulator who had been hiding a third sibling all these time, covering up some major family secret. Emma was enraged, not at me. Under Sarah. She believed I ought to know what was going on, even if she didn't believe a word of it. I found it unbelievable. Sarah was now aiming for my personal life, beyond even professional drama, distributing falsehoods to those not in the office. I had no understanding why she seemed to be on a mission to demolish everything about me. I felt totally hopeless by the time I ended the phone with Emma. No matter where I turned, I cannot escape Sarah's falsehoods. At work, I was getting ice outs. Now she was trying to tamper with my family and relationships while rumors were flying. I thought my own life was slipping from under my grasp, and I couldn't stop it whatever I did. We instantly brought the video to the police station. All the while I was shaking. What indeed was Chloe's intended outcome here? She was acting for what reason? The officer we spoke with treated the video seriously, particularly because Chloe's face was just partially visible in the video. They promised to look into it and bring her before questions. I had an odd mix of relief and anxiety upon report submission. One hand. At last, we had evidence that someone was stalking me. Conversely, I had no idea Chloe could be able of. Now, knowing we were onto her, she tries something worse. That evening, I struggled to fall asleep. I continued mulling about all that had transpired throughout the last few weeks. The whispers, the stalking, the letters. And I couldn't have imagined that would produce this. Really, I never would have believed Chloe would be the one behind it all. Work was tight the next day. I was too afraid to ask anyone whether Chloe had been brought in by the police yet. Though I tried to ignore Sarah and her, the workplace seemed like it was smothering me. Each time I passed Chloe's desk, I could sense her eyes fixed on me as though she were waiting for something. Then Jenna, the administrative manager, phoned Chloe into her office just before lunch. Knowing this was it made my heart race. The cops ought to have got Jenna informed about the video. Trying to concentrate at my work, I kept wondering about what was going beyond that closed door. About 30 minutes later, Chloe emerged from Jenna's office looking pale and clearly startled. She snatched her belongings and left the building without saying anything to anyone. Though I wanted to feel let off, I couldn't. I wasn't sure if this was the end or if something worse was just beginning. The cops called me a few hours later. Chloe acknowledged to having taken pictures and forwarding some of the texts when they informed me she had been hauled in for interrogation. She said it was only a joke and she had no intention for it to get this far. Laughing at a prank like following me and forwarding threatening letters was something else. Neither did the cops find humorous. She was let out on bond after they accused her with stalking and harassment. The officer I talked with cautioned me, nevertheless, to be careful just in case. I was at a loss for ideas. Part of me felt relief when they had found her. Still, another part of me was afraid this wasn't truly over. Chloe still lived out there, and even though she had been accused, I felt unsafe. I am living at Dylan's house right now, low profile, trying to decide what to do going forward. I'm not taking any chances. I'm not sure if Sarah participated in this or if Chloe alone. This whole affair has caused me to doubt everything, including my career, friendships, even my own safety. Simply said, I want to feel normal once more. I am not sure, though, when or if it will ever occur. Edit 3. After Chloe became accused, I assumed things would at last quiet down. They located the stalker of mine. Though I wasn't entirely at peace yet, it seemed like a great weight had been taken off of my shoulders. Too many loose ends persisted. Was Sarah involved too? Or was Chloe truly doing all of this alone? And even if Chloe acknowledged the harassment, I couldn't see any sense in her whole hoax justification. Stalking someone and snapping pictures of their residence and forwarding eerie messages is not a kind of prank you conduct. Chloe had been arrested 1 week ago, and I was back sleeping at my own house. Still, it didn't feel quite correct. If I heard even the slightest disturbance, I would find myself double verifying that the doors were closed at night and rising to peer out the window. It seemed as though I couldn't unwind, always ready for something negative to transpire. One day at work then, something did happen. Since Chloe was arrested, I had been avoiding Sarah and her small circle. To be really honest, they had also been somewhat silent. Like I would see them in the break room or around the office, but nobody said anything to me. I suppose everyone was attempting to keep things as normal as could be. But something obviously had changed. Though it still existed, the conflict now resembled the peace before a storm. Monday afternoon saw Jenna, the administrative manager, phoning a required staff meeting. She stood in front of all of us in the break room, appearing all business. She continued, and my stomach fell. I want to solve the problem influencing our company. Though I knew it wouldn't be great, I wasn't sure if she would discuss Chloe or anything else. Jenna then went on to say that following a review of all that had transpired, including the film we gave in and staff complaints, there will be some disciplinary action taken. My heart was racing. Was Sarah at last going to get her due? I turned to check her, but she was seated there, arms crossed, looking smug. Jenna then silenced the news. We have decided with much difficulty to let Chloe go effective immediately. A murmur permeated the space, though at the same time I couldn't get rid of this sense that something wasn't quite right. Not surprised. The one shown on camera had been Chloe. Yes, but consider Sarah as well. Regarding all the gossip she had started, her getting off scot-free didn't make sense to me. Chloe fell for everything too. I was unable to control myself. I spoke my opinion. Regarding Sarah, try to keep your voice steady, I asked. She was the one first disseminating all the misinformation. Jenna seemed uneasy, as like she didn't particularly want to handle this just now. Maya, we have addressed your worries. Unfortunately, unless more comes to light, there is no strong proof linking Sarah to the harassment. Not much we can do. It still amazed me. Sarah was simply going to walk away from this as if nothing happened, following what she had done to me. Though I knew at that instant nothing could be done, I felt my blood boiling. I had to back off and bite my tongue without any option. I was lashing after the conference. Though I knew wouldn't go far, I wanted to march over to Sarah and demand explanations. Rather, I returned to my desk aiming to concentrate on my job, but my head kept racing. I couldn't get rid of the sense that this meant more. Although Chloe might have been the one caught, Sarah began all of this. Something I missed had to be there. And then I received an email just as I seemed things could not get crazier. It came from an anonymous address, originally thought of as spam or anything else. I froze though as I opened it. Though just a few phrases, the email was enough to get my heart racing once more. You just know a portion of the narrative. Chloe was not acting only on her own. Watch the person you trust closely. My head whirling, I fixed my gaze on the screen. Was someone else truly engaged? Was this some sort of cruel joke? Uncertain about what to believe. Show it to Dylan first came naturally, but I wanted to avoid aggravating him even more than he already was. Trying to figure out what to do next, I decided to sit on it for a little. That evening, I kept thinking about the email, who sent it, and more crucially, why Chloe would be acting on her own. Given her proximity to Sarah especially. I did not have any evidence though, and without it, nothing I could do. I was on edge the next day at work, staring over my shoulder and checking my email non-stop. Then something happened over my lunch break that fundamentally altered everything. Sarah arrived as I was seated at my desk. Indeed, Sarah. I was already dubious since she never spoke with me personally. Leaning on my desk, she smiled strangely, as though she knew something I did not. "Hey," Maya said in this imitation lovely voice that made my skin crawl. I wanted to mention no strong emotions. "All right, I understand that lately things have been strained. Not sure where this was heading." I fixed her eye. "Sure," I said, not really wanting to participate, but she wasn't done. "Funny how things worked out with Chloe, you know?" She carried on, her smile getting bigger. She was usually almost overly eager to assist. My gut fell. Was she disclosing something? Was she trying to convince me Chloe wasn't the brains behind all of this? All right, not sure what to say, so I kept silent. Sarah bent in a bit closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. "I suppose it's fortunate that some individuals know when to keep their lips shut, don't you think?" That marked it. I needed this kind of reassurance. Sarah had been active all through. Although she might not have been the one shown on video, she had been dragging the strings all along. Though I knew it wouldn't help, I wanted to call her out and shout at her. Instead, I only nodded, acting as though I lacked understanding of what she was saying, but within I was boiling. I knew right immediately what I had to do as she turned away. I told Jenna everything right away, plain forwardly. I gave her the email, clarified what Sarah had said, and made it quite evident that this was not finished. Though Jenna appeared surprised, she vowed to investigate, whether she would or not really. One thing was clear. I was not going to let Sarah get away with this. After her minor, I was not about to let Sarah get away with this. At my workstation, none of hard emotions exist. She was playing mental games even though I knew she was engaged in everything. Presenting herself as not fearing being discovered. Her seeming confidence was the thing that bothered me constantly. Like none would believe me even if I said the truth. That day following my conversation with Jenna, I resolved I needed actual, indisputable evidence that Sarah was behind it all. Simple was my plan. Bait her into a fall. She was not trying too hard to disguise it anyhow. I started by being laid back and making extra effort to say hello to Sarah upon spotting her in the workplace. It was strange. I could see it slightly threw her off. She nodded quickly and offered me these false grins, but she left not to linger to chat. She obviously felt she had one, but I was only starting. That afternoon I heard Sarah on the phone chatting to Chloe. She remained in touch with her even after Chloe was sacked. Though I heard nothing, I caught enough to realize Chloe wasn't falling by herself. Sarah was saying things like, "Don't worry, they won't find anything. And you carried out what was required." I needed only that to hear. It was time I determined to relocate. I planned things up the next day so I would run across Sarah outside the workplace around lunch. I told her I wanted to clear the air and present myself as above all the turmoil. She grabbed the bait naturally. She assumed I was attempting to calm things down by offering it. We visited this tiny cafe around the block, and I began gently probing her about all that had transpired, acting as though I wanted to know how Chloe came to bear all the guilt. Then it occurred. Sarah let our guard down. She began talking excessively, outlining how she didn't want things to go that far, but Chloe was too foolish to follow directions. Though I kept it cool, my heart was pounding, nodding in line with what I know. Sarah rumbled on about how she was only trying to teach me a lesson for making her seem terrible at work. But Chloe overreached herself and wrecked everything. Trying to frighten me into quitting, she even acknowledged that she was the one who had sent those initial few anonymous messages. I was hiding in my backpack recording her on my phone all through. That evening on my way home, I checked to had everything by running over the recording repeatedly. It was everything there. Her admissions, her falsehoods, her manipulation of Chloe into completing her filthy deed. I was angry as well as relieved. Sarah was at last captured, but I was enraged that it had taken this long and so much tension to get to this stage. I carried the recording directly to Jenna the following morning. She turned to pay attention. Her face became white as Sarah's voice poured forth, owning everything. Jenna seemed as though she had no idea what to say by the time the tape stopped. She assured me of dealing with Sarah. This time I really believed her. Sarah received calls into Jenna's office within hours. Though I didn't hear exactly what transpired, Sarah departed the building that day carrying a box of her belongings under security supervision. Like a weight had been taken off. Following all the lies, gossip, and stalking, Sarah was at last gone. Chloe might have started it, but Sarah was the genius, and now she was permanently out of my life. When I look back, I still find it unbelievable how far things have come. Something rather foolish. One thing is certain though. I now rely on my inner feeling and never permit someone like Sarah to control me once more. That concludes it. I at last free from all the drama.